Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Breakthrough, a show about mastering the mindsets of success. The show is proudly brought to you by Leaderonomics and Opeaklife. My name is Lisa Wong. I'm a transformation coach at Opeaklife and Mindvalley and a former anchor at ESPN. It's my vision to bring to you the stories of successful individuals and deep dive into how they build themselves to become the person they are, so you are inspired and committed to live your best life personally and professionally. Breakthrough is a fortnightly show, and we're always excited to bring you each new episode. Now, with the upcoming holidays, our team will be taking a break, and the show will resume on the 11th of January, 2022. So this is going to be our last live show for 2021. Next week, we'll bring you a roundup version of Breakthrough, where we pull together some of the best insights from our guest this year. And now to our guest today, the spectacular Brenda Bence. Brenda is passionate about two things: leadership and branding, and how the two work together to help leaders achieve greater success in the workplace. Sought after across 6 continents as an executive leadership coach and motivational keynote speaker, she's known for her inside-out leadership system. Brenda is also recognized by Thinker 50 as a world leader in coaching. Brenda earned her MBA from Harvard Business School and is the author of 11 award-winning books on leadership, coaching, and branding. Welcome, Brenda, to Breakthrough.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's really a joy to be here with you.
I'd like to invite our viewers to invite anyone you believe can benefit from this very important topic, sharing with Brenda on self-leadership and carving your personal brand. And I welcome your comments. Our producer, Shasi, will prompt me with your sharing and questions throughout the show. Now, Brenda, before I begin, I'd like to put a frame on our discussion. Today, we're increasingly becoming aware that personal branding is important to level up in our professional life. That success impacts our personal life greatly. Better influence at work oftentimes translate to greater satisfaction, enhance work relationships. In short, a compelling personal leadership brand will allow us to do more, earn more, and be more in life. Now, how do we nail our personal leadership brand? So before we get to that, I'm curious to find out, how did you, Brenda, enter this self-leadership space and branding with such passion and drive?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Lisa, I spent the first part of my career building billion-dollar brands at companies like Procter & Gamble. And through that, I learned that great brands don't get to be great by accident. I know that there's a tried and true system for building great brands. It's from taking good brands, how they become household names that literally billions of people around the world mention every single day. I know there's a system for that. Now, at the same time, I was leading too. I was leading my marketing function of a major multi-billion-dollar company. I was the VP of marketing. And as a leader of my own function, I had responsibility for dozens of brands, which spanned 4 continents in 50 countries. So clearly my passions were leadership and branding. And I wanted to find a way that I could combine the two in a fashion that would help others develop their careers, develop themselves as leaders, both self-leaders and leaders of others. So when I left the corporate world to start my own company, a coaching and speaking company, I took what I had learned about branding, those elements that go into building a strong brand, and I turned them into a leadership branding concept. And it works for all levels of leadership, again, from self-leadership all the way up to CEOs. And that's how leadership branding concept was born.
No, tell me, Brenda, that's a very fascinating story. I'm sure behind this as well, if I dig a little deeper. So tell me, was there any kind of personal story in here that, why branding? What about it that intrigued you? And were you also passionate about developing your own personal brand that led you to go into this field and share it with others?
Actually, I would say it was less about me. In fact, I never thought my name would be a brand. I can tell you that. All of my team will tell you that. They did not think, none of us thought I would become the brand. Well, maybe I didn't think that, maybe they did. But ultimately, that's where it came out. And ironically, I do lead my own brand today, which is something I never thought of happening. But what really happened when it came to branding is, so when I was coming out of Harvard, you mentioned I went to Harvard Business School. when I was coming out of Harvard Business School, by that time, I had already worked a few years, and I had done finance, operations, administrations, IT, human resources. I'd done a lot, but I hadn't done marketing and I hadn't done branding. And so my career counselor at HBS said, I really think you should consider branding or marketing. I scored very high on a test. It would ask you what you'd be good for, and it came up branding and marketing. And I had done well in my marketing classes at HBS. So I thought, well, okay. So I said, well, what company would be good? They said Procter & Gamble. I said, okay, fine. So I applied and got in. Now, I was planning on staying for a year and a half, just to get me dangerous enough to know about marketing and branding so I could go off and start my own company. Well, as things go, I stayed there for a very long time, worked with them all around the world, managed brands for them all around the world, and loved every minute of it. I just felt like a fish in water when it came to marketing and branding. So did I plan for it? Not really, but I took an opportunity when it came my way.
Right. So what did you discover? I mean, when you look around and yourself back then, where you came out and looked at this field and it needs to be told, right? It needs to be shared. So what about it that's so important, and what happened when it shifted for you, setting up your own company and then marketing your own brand as Brenda Bence?
Yeah, and I would never have anticipated that. Well, look, I came out of HBS, went into branding, loved it, leadership brand. Again, remember, I love that combination. And I knew also by that time, because I was senior enough in my career at that time, that I knew that it was lonely at the top, Lisa. I knew it was lonely at the top because I had been there, and I was at the time a woman in business at that high level, which there weren't that many of them back then, not like it is today. And so I knew it was lonely at the top, and I really wanted to see what I could do to help others at that level. And I knew that this leadership branding concept would work. So really that was kind of the start of it. How could I help leaders? And I was sitting there in my office one day. I remember very clearly thinking, how could I help leaders develop, grow, and be the kind of people they want to be? And it went ding. I knew that there was these 6 elements that define every brand that exists in the world. Any brand that you tell me you love, Lisa, I promise they have these 6 elements. It's how great brands become great. And I thought, I'll apply them to leaders. I'll apply these to individuals. Let's see what happens. And that was the infant stage of it. And it became personal branding for job seekers, for anybody at work, for college graduates, for CEOs, it just went all over the world like that.
Right. Would you be so kind to share what the 6 key insights are, or the 6, what do you call it, concepts or pillars?
6 elements of a brand. I can tell you so there's 3 key parts to a leadership brand or to any personal brand. And just to keep it simple, the first one is you must define it. Okay, you got to define your brand. You have to know what you want to stand for. Every brand in the world does this. What brand do you want? What do you want to stand for? Now, within that first step, there's 6 elements that go into defining a brand. Now, I call it your brand positioning statement. It's how you are positioned in the market, in your company, in your environment, as compared to others, because we are being compared. That's the way it works. So I can run through them quickly, but I can't go details by details. But you want to have it starts with who's the audience for your brand, because your brand is the way you want others to perceive, think, and feel about you. Others. So those others are what I call your audience for the brand. Okay. And what do they need? Okay. And there's different types of needs that they have. You can talk about that. Then what would be a competitive set? Like who would be a comparison that would be able to offer that same type of thing? And then you say, what is the benefit that I offer? Reasons to believe. Why should I believe that I can offer that? And lastly, what's the brand character? Brand character. And that's a really powerful part, the brand character. So those 6 fit together like a jigsaw puzzle, if you would, to define the brand to define the brand, step 1.
Okay. Would you have any examples, since you have a lot of stories and you also wrote like 11 books, any stories that encapsulate this and made it, and it became a success?
Oh, why? How much time do you have? This is what I do for a living.
An hour.
There are so many examples. So many examples. Let's see. Let me share one. A young man. He was probably in his, I think, late to mid 30s when he came to me. And he was a leader in one of the largest, most successful global banks in the world. Let's call him Adam. Okay, Adam came to me and he was scared. He was a rising star. He had been a rising star for years, but he suddenly hit a wall. He hit a ceiling. Why? Well, Lisa, the company implemented an engagement survey, right? And his team, his group that was underneath him, not only had the lowest engagement scores in his country, but the lowest engagement scores in his region and the lowest engagement scores in the world for the entire organization. They were single-digit engagement scores. Now, this was clearly going to be a brand buster, right? A career buster, unless he did something about it. So we sat down, we used these 6 elements, we devised a strategy for his leadership brand. We worked through that 3-step process, and he began to implement these steps every single day. Now that's key. Consistency every day is key. And through regular coaching and application at work, within 18 months, he got his new engagement scores, Lisa. And I'll never forget, it was hilarious because not only were they the highest in his country, but the largest single leader change improvement in the region and the single largest change in the world. In fact,
Wow.
so the funny part about this is the bank was so skeptical about this dramatic shift that they flew an auditor to the country where Adam was working so that they could interview his team members to make sure it was real. And at the end of that year, he actually came back and shared with me that through using this system, Adam got a 6-figure bonus from the work that he and his team had done, 6 figures. These are the kinds of results you can get by using leadership branding. And this is not an exception. This is just one case that I could share. There's many, many cases. Yeah.
Right. That's impressive. So tell me now, with Adam, a lot of when it comes to defining your brand and staying authentic, so you can define a value, right? Say, let's take an example here, Brenda. So let's say my brand, or let's say your brand, it's about authenticity. It's
Yes.
about what would you say your brand is, Brenda? If I have to put into a few words.
So I like to use brand character. So I like to use brand character as a definition, right? So first of all, I help leaders understand how others perceive, think, and feel about them to achieve greater success in the workplace. And it's long-term sustainable success. But I like to do like a little exercise called the 5 words exercise, Lisa. And maybe you want to do it too with me. But the 5 words exercise is it's built off brand character. Brand character is the feel of the brand. Every brand that we know, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, whatever, they have a brand character. Every brand has one. And it's the feel of it. If I say Mercedes-Benz versus Ferrari, you're going to have a different feel to that. And brand character, well, you can tell me what my brand character is. I like to do that as a test. But there are 5 words I put together to define how I want to come across as my brand character. You can tell me if I'm doing all right, Lisa. So professional, expert, engaging, approachable, and humorous. So those are the 5 that I want to. And so at the end of speeches, I'll say, what are my 5 words? And I always love to see what comes through. Did I deliver on those 5 words? Everyone here can do the same thing. Pretend you're walking out of a conference room, or you're pushing a Zoom button or a Google Meet button, and you're finishing up a session, and people turn to each other and say, wow, she was really, what are the 5 words you wish they would say about you? That's what we're aiming for when we talk about brand character. Yeah.
Right. A lot of those came true the moment I met you. So well done. It's about staying authentic. So you can actually put the words out and say that they defined you. But how do you make sure that they truly are what you're living and breathing and exhibiting every moment? So do you also have like feedback from, I don't know, family, if you have to go really intimate, or even like just team members and employees on the team, just to get them to gauge like, okay, what does Brenda Bence stand for?
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, so the first step, remember, was define it. And there was those 6 elements that go to that. The second step is to communicate it, and communicate it consistently. Now, if you think about the great brands in the world, they are completely consistent with what they do. You walk into McDonald's in Nigeria, you're going to see the same thing as a McDonald's in Chicago or in Spain. You're going to see the same thing. It's the same with the Starbucks. You're going to see the same thing. Great brands are consistent with what they do, and that's how they communicate their brands. We never see their brand positioning statement, Lisa. We don't see that. That's kind of under the radar. But what we do see is how they act, what they do. And what they do is what drives what our impressions of their brand. Now it's the same with us. It's the same with us as leaders. So as individuals. So what we do now, I kind of studied people for a long, long time and realized there's kind of 5 essential activities we all do each and every day that most communicate our brands, Lisa. And you want to be aware of those. It's the way you act, react, look, sound, and think. Okay, so the thinking is applicable for this group in particular. But the key is you've got to be self-aware and disciplined to think about how you want to act, react, look, and sound every single day. And when you are consistent like that, you will build a brand. I remember I was working with an executive once, and she was struggling with, she kind of got explosive at times. She would get very angry at times when things didn't go her way. And she came in to talk to me. And she said, I know I need to fix this, but I just get so irritated on the inside. Well, she went for about 3 months. We worked on a lot of things internally. She did a great job. She was doing so well. And I was getting ready to do my midpoint stakeholder interviews, which you just mentioned. I call people and say, how's she doing? How's she doing? And unfortunately, she had a blow up right before I called. And she had been consistently good for 3 straight months, Lisa. But because of that recency effect, that recent blow up, every person I spoke to, they said, now she's back to the same old, same old. So even after 3 months of consistently doing it well, when you have that one mistake, can really blow your brand. So it's all about being consistent. Now, I call it being vertically aligned. What does that mean? So if you think about a pole, like a totem pole, you've got the base, and this is kind of like your mindset, right? What you thinking. And then how you act, react, look, and sound, it's up here. So this is what you think. This is how you act, react, look, and sound. If it's all over here and it's not matching up, it does not work. But if you can lock and load like that, and you are vertically aligned so that your mindset, how you act, react, look, and sound are all aligned, that's when you build a strong brand. And it's not just a strong brand, but it's authentic. Like people can feel that it's real.
I love the analogy. I always, with my coaching, I'll use this as, if let's say you're into cars. So imagine the body of the car, right? The chassis, and then you have the 4 wheels. So imagine those 4 wheels are things that you characterize yourself, the values of what you stand for as a brand. And then if let's say, you're not aligned, you're not authentic, means one of those wheels or 2 of those wheels are out of traction and the car just won't run.
Wobbly. It'll run, but it'll be really wobbly. Yeah.
Exactly.
And the people along with you on the ride are not going to have an enjoyable trip. I can tell you that.
So I love also the fact, Brenda, that you bring up this part where it's almost akin to a mirror, right? So first you map out, as you say, define your brand. So what do you want to be perceived as? And the other part is mirror, like literally putting the mirror in front of you and seeing how close are you to the real person that you want to be.
Yeah.
And your latest book, I think, was it the latest book? Correct me, Brenda, about going inside out. So it's
absolutely
who you are inside, and who you are, just shows up. It's you when you show up on the outside.
100%, Lisa. And so, it's called The Forgotten Choice. And it's about shifting your inner mindset, shaping your outer world. So it's really about how it all starts on the inside, but we tend to think about leadership on the outside. We often do this. We'll say, I want to change the way I behave as a leader. I want to change the way I walk, talk, present, all that. But none of that's going to happen effectively unless you change the inside job that comes first. And that's why the third step that you've talked about, define your brand, communicate it consistently. The third one is to avoid damaging the brand that you've worked so hard to create. And that starts as an inside job when it comes to leadership, because it's about your mental, emotional, and for some people, spiritual health. What does the inside say about you? What are you thinking and feeling? And how does that fit with the outside of the brand you're portraying? And I have a really, really interesting case of this one, if I can share that. So if it's not authentic, people will know it. Let's put it that way. So a CEO of a very large medical company came to me, and 80,000 employees worldwide, many continents. And he said, he showed me his feedback. He was perceived as leading with an iron fist, and he was not particularly well liked by people, and definitely not inspiring. And he himself, well, frankly, he was pretty miserable. He's just pretty unhappy. He said, I want to take this job because I thought it would be positive, but I don't feel positive. So I had him do an assessment to better understand his leadership styles and what was going on inside of his head. And what I saw on the paper was fascinating. It wasn't at all what I was hearing from his stakeholders in his company, the people that reported to him or worked with him. And what we uncovered, Lisa, was that he was actually a very personable, charismatic leader by nature. But he'd learned through years and years of tough leaders that he had to emulate them, to copy them. And he thought that was what leadership was. That's his role model. So he became that rough, tough jerk in the corner office. That's what he became. And when we saw this side by side, here's what people are saying, here's what you really are. I asked him what spoke to him, and he realized that actually he'd left behind the authentic leader he knew he could be. He traded it in for the kind of leader that he thought he was supposed to be, based on so many years of being led by those rough, gruff leaders. And so we defined the brand he wanted for himself, put in place these systems with all the definitions and the communications, the brand that he would really be true to who he really was. And he started day by day returning back to being the person who he really knew he could be, his real self. And it was the most fun to watch, because within a matter of months, the impact was just so dramatic. He was happier because he could be more authentic. He could be his real self. His senior leadership team were through the moon because they had a CEO that they could report to who was more approachable, who was actually a lot of fun. They hadn't thought of him as fun. And that created a happier culture overall as well. And the business really started to grow even more than it had been. So once again, it's just attestation to the power of successfully managing your brand as a leader.
Oh, what a breakthrough for that person. Oh, wow. Well done. Well, Eva Ling joining us. Eva, you have a question. I'll come to that just in a bit. I would like to point out Brenda's work. Now, we mentioned about the book, The Forgotten Choice. That's Brenda's latest book. Shift Your Inner Mindset, Shape Your Outer World. It can be purchased online at Amazon or Books Depository. Now, as a gift to the listeners, Brenda has agreed to offer a complimentary copy of the companion guide to The Forgotten Choice. Now, it's a workbook full of exercises to coach you through the core topics of the book and deepens your self-awareness. So to receive your free fillable PDF copy of the guide, email us a receipt of your purchase to The Forgotten Choice to books@brendabence.com. We'll have that pointed out later in the chat, so you'll see that on there. Now, Eva, welcome. Eva's question is, speaking of leadership and emotional intelligence, how do you deal with difficult external stakeholders, especially those who are not the decision makers in choosing who to work with, Brenda?
So speaking of leadership and emotional intelligence, how do you deal with difficult external stakeholders, like clients or government officials, this type of thing, I'm assuming? Okay. So here's what I would say to you. Sometimes we have to shift our inner mindset to shape our outer world, which is the subtitle of my latest book. The point here is that no one gets up in the morning and goes, ooh, I just can't wait to get to work and cause problems for Eva. Ooh, this is going to be fun. We don't. But it can feel that way sometimes. And I totally understand that. So when you say dealing with difficult external stakeholders, the first thing I would say is start looking at inside with your own mindset. What you think is what you get. And often when we think of someone, like right now, if I ask Eva, and by the way, thank you for sharing this. It really helps us all learn. If I ask you, Eva, what's your thought around a particularly difficult external stakeholder, I suspect you'd fall into a place, we all do it, of fear, a place of, oh, him versus me or her versus me, or there'd be a real you versus me front. And what I would love to do, encourage you to do, is rise up out of this you versus me thing and rise into that place of what's the right thing to do for whatever, society, for the work, for the company, for whatever we're working on together as a team. And when you can shift your mindset to that space of finding that common ground, ooh, it's a sweet spot. It's a sweet spot, and it will shift the way you're acting inside as well. You'll let go of that you versus me piece. And it's absolutely beautiful to see, and it's beautiful to experience. So it's really pausing long enough to be self-aware to say, that person doesn't want to cause me problems. So I'm going to shift my mindset around this. Let me think about how I could look at this differently. What's our common cause? And let's raise it to that level and have that conversation.
Very nice. Brenda, you mentioned about this executive earlier on the story where he shifted his leadership style to the one that he felt authentic, because he's been in the past modeling it after, I don't know, probably books that he has read or people that he has seen as role models in his earlier working days. So it's coming back to how being aware of how we shape our reality. So, by this I mean that, if we emulate someone, or if we emulate a thinking process or even a behavioral pattern, just be very careful about what we are showing up as, or, what are we putting it out there that is not in alignment with who we really are inside. Because this person, this executive you mentioned, is this jolly guy, he's a happy guy, and he's really fun to be with, and that didn't show, and it's such a shame.
Well, we do this a lot. In fact, one of my favorite exercises to do with a new client that I meet is I do it called Leadership Lifeline. And I have them go back and explain to me how they became the leader that they've become today. And it's fascinating. In fact, I ran a LinkedIn poll not too long about this. I said, what impact did your first leader, your very first leader, have in terms of how you lead today? And 75% said some or a lot. So we underestimate sometimes the importance of those first leaders. They set the pace, or they set the model for what we think good leaders should be. And we have to be aware enough to say, is this resonating with me? Like, this is one style of leadership, but is it the right one for me? And it's really easy to get caught up in believing, oh, well, all leaders are like that, right? All leaders are like that, so I must emulate that. And that's exactly what happened with this one leader that we were talking about. He had just for years and years and years seen these kind of jerky leaders. And so he thought that's what you had to do. And it was causing him stress too, Lisa. He was stressed because he was like, he'd go into work trying to be someone he wasn't all the time. And when he could just get back to his authentic self, he said for the first time in years, work was a blast. He said it was just fun. I came to work and I could just be who I was, and the business grew too. So I think this is the beauty of finding that authentic self of who we really are. And that requires us to look at beliefs and question all of them. Are they real? Yes. Were they real once, but they're not real anymore? Is it really my belief? So we have to really do the inside work, the inside job of getting clear on that.
Absolutely. Now, Brenda, I know that from my own coaching, that is really a challenge with a lot of people when it comes to showing up as the authentic self, because there is this courage to be really who you are deep within, and then showing that person to the world. And because we learn so much, I call this socialscape. So socialscape, it's like the Matrix, when you come out, and this is where you listen to all the advertising and what's going on in social media and the noise, where companies and conglomerates tell you to buy their products. It's just very noisy in the socialscape. So in this part, we, as you say, emulate, take on what we think is the true way to behave or to act in the real world. But then that cuts the link to who we really are inside, and then having that courage to really show up as who you are. Telling people your likes and dislikes, and your opinion, and even your fashion sense, to make it really simple. That takes courage. So how do you get that inner part, Brenda, this mirror that you have to look upon and then really show up as that person inside with true courage?
Well, I think there's a couple things. First of all, you have to recognize that by the time we're late teens, early 20s, we are a walking bag of fear-based beliefs. We are. We're not born with fear. We're really not born with fear. In fact, why do we love to be around babies? Because they're just so fearless. They're not afraid of anything, right? They're just loving life. They're just enjoying. There's just a bundle of joy. But then we teach them fear, and we don't think we are, but we do. Don't touch that stove, and don't talk to the neighbors. They're not like us. And we just start inculcating these belief systems that really aren't real, but we grow up learning them from people that we respect and admire and love. So we assume that they're right. And we really have to challenge ourselves, and we have to start looking to what really resonates within. And that brings us to two things to cut through the fear and get to what I call the joy of possibility, the potentiality of this all. Now, when you do that, it comes to a thing I like to work with people in the workplace as well. I call it the P&C. Which is passion. You can do this yourself. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is low and 10 is high. What's your level of passion for what you do? I've had people walk in doing something for 30 years. I'll say, what's your level of passion? They'll say a 2. How'd you get into it? Well, my parents told me it was the right thing to do. So I just got into it when I graduated from university. It's like, oh my goodness, right? So this is my point. What really speaks to you? And that's passion. So on a scale of 1 to 10, where's your passion score right now? Secondly, the C stands for context. Are you in the right place, location, with the right people and the right environment to be able to express that passion? The passion, the context combined, that is where magic happens. When you can have a high level score on both passion and context, you're in the right place. And if you're high on passion, but low on context, you need to find a new place to be. Or, you're low on passion, but high on context. You like the environment, then find something that you can express your passion within that same environment. So that's how I would approach that. I think it's, we are in charge of our lives. We are creating our lives at all time, Lisa, and we can't blame anybody else. We have to just recognize that we own our own beliefs, and are they working for us or against us?
Very true. Now, you mentioned about context and environment. So it's very true then that environment that you're in, even the workplace or even at home where you're based, just having an environment that is safe, that is supportive, that is positive, mostly. I know that a lot of people find it challenging. Some people struggle to even have an environment come up naturally, but having an environment that is safe and just positive is just truly important.
Absolutely. Yeah, the context. Look at the context. I was working with I know, and I've lived in Asia for 23 years, so I understand, Asian context, and I know a lot of, it's kind of tradition to live with your parents. And I remember one woman I was coaching, a wonderful woman from Singapore. The truth was, she loved her parents, she loved her family, but they didn't live together very well. And they needed to find a way to break through that. She finally had conversations with them, sat down and said, I love you. I want to have my own place. They get along a house of fire. They love each other. They get together every weekend, but just don't live together. I mean, there's examples of that, right? So anyway, each of us has to find our way, respectful of our elders, our parents, our wishes, but it's also about expressing the truth of your own reality, your own authenticity, and what speaks to your heart, so that you can be the best you want to be.
Oh, brilliant. Wax just said 10. So I presume that Wax, you're scoring 10 with passion and context. Where you are, well done.
Well done, you. Stay there.
Stay there, yes. And prosper, just push forward.
Absolutely.
Brenda, now you mentioned also in your book, quit acting like a victim of your calendar, your time, and the system, and utilize powerful mind management techniques to stop limiting behaviors. Is there something, perhaps a technique or a tool that you find really useful, powerful, that you can share?
Well, let's talk about time management. As employees or as owners of our own company, we're really selling two things: our time and our talent. That's pretty much it. Our knowledge, our time. So how we use our time is so critically important. I remember once I wrote an article about John Paul Getty. He's a very wealthy billionaire back in his day, and he used to smoke cigars. He had a cigar smoking habit. And then one day he sat down and calculated how many minutes in a year that he was spending, how much time he was spending smoking a cigar. And he realized that his hourly rate, it was costing him $50,000 a year just to smoke. So he decided he was going to stop. My point is, if we look at time as a resource, a real resource, if every minute of your day, every minute were worth $1,000, how would you use your time differently? So I have leaders, individuals I work with do a time analysis. And I don't know if you've ever done this before, Lisa, but oh boy, it's revealing. For 7 straight days, if you can do it, 14, but usually 7 is about the most that people can do. From the time you wake up until the time you go to bed, every 15 minutes, you jot down what you just did. Does a couple of things. Number one, and you have to keep it on a tracker. It's really important because then I come back and I actually assess it. I look at it from a different perspectives and I can do color coding. It's quite fascinating to take a look. But the reason I say we have to do it is because we often don't know how we spend our time. We're often doing things too, which I call rapid refocus. You know, our brains love focus. Our mind needs focus to do one thing at once for an extended period of time. That's how we can conserve the most energy, because our brains take up 70% of our entire glucose in a day. 70%. Our brains are sucking energy like crazy. And when we constantly refocus, look at this text, look at this, read this, we are exhausting our brains. But when you can focus on one thing and one thing only for a period of time, you will feel more energized by the end of the day, etc. You'll have more time for your family. So I have a lot of people do this on a regular basis. And it's extraordinary when you do this, what happens. You start to notice patterns, you start to notice themes, you start to notice habits that are not working for you, they're working against you. So the one thing I would say is get really clear about how you use your time, be honest. And the biggest culprits, meetings, used to be travel, not so much anymore, but meetings, travel, and emails. Taming the email monster is another one that people often struggle with. Yeah.
And I know there are a lot of apps and tools there that help people now kind of tailor and limit and clean up the emails so that they can have more time and spend it usefully.
Yeah, there's a great thing to do on email. I call it email triage. You know, if you go into an emergency room, they have to decide who's going to die and who's going to live, right? And so it's called triaging. Well, it's the same with emails. Which emails are actually going to get read? Which ones aren't that essential? Which ones, and if you notice, I'll tell you the truth. Usually 80% of your emails are coming from the same people. And a lot of them you could write and say, hey, if it's not strategic, if the house isn't burning down, whatever, don't write me. You know, I mean, you can, right? Or don't feel you have to copy me on everything. So, yeah.
I have a very good email filter. So it kind of acts and filter out emails that I know that I'm going to put inside and blocked it. And I know that I'm not receiving just things that are demanding on my attention unnecessarily. Yeah. I also like the part where you put in your book, Brenda, learn how to successfully manage up to bosses and across to peers. So is this about owning yourself and also being able to be truthful to your employers and your bosses?
Well, a common theme that I found with coaching leaders, now I'm going to say leaders of others, because this was when you start to reach a point where you lead others, what I've found a phenomenon that happens, Lisa, is people tend to focus most of their attention down, right? I'm going to be the best leader. I'm going to lead my team. I'm going to coach them. I'm going to spend time with them. I'm going to, right? What happens though, is that you reach a point where your peers and your boss are not seeing you enough. They're not getting exposure to you enough. I had a gentleman come in, let's call him Paul, came into my office. And he was really upset because he'd just gotten some feedback he's gotten his annual feedback, glowing remarks from his team beneath him. Oh my gosh, they went on and on about what a wonderful leader he was. What a fantastic guy. Many of them say, my favorite boss of all times, right? His boss said, he's he disappears. We never see him. I don't hear from him. I have no idea what he's doing. He doesn't report up. His peers said he's kind of, I can't reach him. He's always busy with his team, blah, blah, blah. Oh, right. So what happens is you don't often remember that it's up, down, and across. You've got to do that all. You have to manage all those stakeholder relationships in an organization because they're all equally important. And if I can say, the higher up you get, the more those peers and up relationships become important. Why? Because eventually those peers will either become your boss or you will be their boss. So you really want to make sure you're managing those relationships very effectively.
I like that. Let's talk about that deeper. So if you are into, and you're now keen to look at personal branding, personal leadership branding. So self-leadership is what we talked about earlier. And now this is putting your brand out there. So you're saying across, up, and also bottom. Is that right, Brenda?
Down. Okay. Yeah, up. So up, across, and down. So superiors, peers, and direct reports.
And how do you do that in a holistic, totality kind of manner?
Well, the one thing I would say is start watching your time again. I always like to draw a pie graph and say, okay, what percentage of the time do you think you should be focusing on your team? What percentage of the time should you be focusing on your peers? And what percentage of the time should you be managing up and building your relationships up? And just thinking about relationships. And sometimes there's clients in there and other things too, right? Obviously family and all that, but in a business context. And it's really interesting. They'll draw the graph and they'll make the percentages and they'll say, how well does that reflect your current reality? And usually not what it should be. So then you just set some goals. You say, okay, I want 25% of my time to be spent with my peers. I need to get to know my peers better. We can collaborate, we can build business together, things like that. So you just have to, it helps you to draw the self-awareness, which of course draws the intention of what you want it to look like in the future. And that starts the action. Yeah.
Okay. So let's look at it this way. So you're saying that there's a part to work where you have your performance, where it's about the job, right? It's about the projects and whatever you have to deliver. So delivering that to point. And the other part is building relationships. So let's go up now. Upwards, your bosses, your employers. What are the best ways, Brenda, would you say that people can do to start building relationships if they haven't thought about that at this point?
Well, one thing is a mindset shift. I'll give you an example. I was working with another executive who I interviewed. He had two bosses, one in London, one in Hong Kong. And so I interviewed them both, very high level. And they said, oh, he's the problem guy, always the problem guy. And I said, tell me more. And they said, oh, every time he contacts me, he's got problems. So I came back to the leader. I said, help me understand. He said, I don't ever want to bother them with anything besides when I really, really need to. And I only really, really need to when I've got a big problem. So he became the problem guy to his bosses. He was the problem employee. The others, however, his peers were being much more positive about, here's the good things that are happening. So we set a ratio in place, Lisa. I said, okay, you're going to share for every one negative you need to share share up, you're going to share 5 positives. Okay. You're going to share 5 positives. And so we said, well, how do you do that? I said, okay, well, let's brainstorm. So he came up with these ideas. Every time one of his team members did something really good, like hit a milestone, he would send an email to the employee saying, congratulations to you, well done. And he would copy the boss. Okay. That's one way of communicating up, right? That the boss knows now what's going on. Or better yet, he would send it to the boss, copying the employee and saying, I just want you to know how proud I am of, Jane, because of what she's just done on project. 5 of those for every 1 negative. Now, why is this important? 5 to 1, 5 to 1. So they're going to remember, they're going to be managing the 5 more than they're going to be seeing this. And when they come to this, it's like, oh, it's an exception. He only has a problem once in a while, right? So that's extremely important that you manage that balance. Yeah.
Now, so this particular leader, he was being appreciative of his team members, their performance, their good performance. So if it's coming back to that person itself, how do you promote yourself without bragging to help you gain the visibility that you want in your job?
Yes. So here's the most important part about bragging. We think it's bragging. I mean, ooh, I don't want to brag. And I understand, I completely understand. But here's the thing. If we think of it as, oh, it's bragging, what's the mindset? We're not going to want to do it. If we shift our mindset away from that and say, you know what? My boss needs to know what's going well. Is this true? Of course it's true. The boss cannot represent you well if they don't know what's going on, and they can't do their job at their level if they don't know what's going on that's going well. So when we shift the mindset away from this and go, aha, interesting. It's not bragging. I'm doing my job by letting my boss know because he or she needs to know. They need to know what's going on in my area of the company so that they can do a good job, so that they can represent us well, and it's good for everybody that they know that. Now, when you shift that mindset, oof, suddenly you're like, lids off. Let me tell you all the things that are going well, because it's your job, boss. You need to know this. So we need to shift that mindset, shift that inner mindset, shape the outer world. Yeah.
So that would also mean being very aware and also penning down, documenting the progress, perhaps in your department, how much productivity has been raised, from doing this particular thing, this change in the department, whatever that's been calculated, report it back to upwards.
Yeah. And the other thing, yes, absolutely. And, don't think that too much is too much. It's not. Bosses need to know. I mean, I wouldn't report them every single day something that happened, but I would say, hey, here's the milestones. Here's the things that have gone well. Here's what we were anticipating that turned out great, even better than we thought. And the other thing I would say on this, the more you document it by sending those emails, et cetera, you've actually got your own resume that you're preparing. Because often what happens, and this happens to me, leaders will come to and they say, I can't believe this happened. I got laid off. And the first question I'll say is, how good is your network? Second question I'll say, how ready is your resume, your CV? And most of the responses to both are, neither one is ready. And my point is, when you are constantly doing the updates with your boss like that, it's a perfect way, a record of what you've done well, and that becomes your resume. When I was working in the corporate world, I used to once a month suspense myself a note. And in that suspensing myself a note, I would say, once a month, what did I achieve this month? That's resume worthy, right? We hit a new market share high, or our profits came in at record pace faster than we anticipated. Whatever it was, that becomes part of my resume. So it's just a nice little system you can put in place. It takes 20 minutes a month to just sit down and collect all of that. And it's helping your career move forward too.
I like that a lot. The part about successfully influencing others, I think some people actually feel this sort of embarrassment or esteem where they don't have an official title or authority. So, how do you successfully influence others when you don't have one?
So influence, I think, is the big word for the 21st century, because organizations are getting flatter and flatter. Okay. Used to have a lot of hierarchy and all that. You don't have that anymore. Organizations are very flat. And because they're very flat, we no longer have the titles, the positional power that we used to have to get authority, to be able to, our word counts. So you have to learn to influence across that very thin layer. And it can mean influencing up, down, and across, right? If you don't have the positional authority. Now, in one of my books, Leading You, it actually talks about influence, and it talks about the 12 ways that I see in the workplace of influencing. There's many, many, many different types. But let me give you just one that's kind of fun to do, actually, and it's a great way to build relationships. I call it the consultative method of influence. Let's say that you want to implement a new system, okay, or a new process. And it's important to be able to do for your success of your own department and for yourself. And you have one particular character and another function that really needs to be bought in for it to work. Like, that. Go to them and say, do you mind if I just pick your brain? So this is what I'm thinking about doing. They're a consultant to you, okay? I'd love to get your thought. Do you think this would work? Won't work? What's going to work? What would you recommend? Now, what's happening is, when people ask you your opinion, what happens? You want them to succeed. You want them to succeed because they've come and asked you, and now your input is part of the solution. So it's a wonderful way to get people engaged in helping to solve a problem, and they may come up with a better solution than you had too. So it's called the consultative method of influence, where you go to the person that you most want to influence and ask them for advice and help. That's just one.
I think we covered a lot of the key fundamentals of what it takes to build a personal brand. Would you say that, Brenda?
Yeah, oh, well, there's
Yes.
lots. I've written many books on it, so there's lots of dimensions. There's many dimensions. We're kind of skimming the surface, but you're getting hopefully you're getting a good enough to get started. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for all the gems that you've been sharing. Now, I love the part also in one of your books where you say, would you want to work for you? So you're this leader, right? And you have built your personal leadership brand. So asking this question is very powerful.
Yeah, well, I laugh when I every time I hear that. When I was trying to decide what to name the book, I recall the situation. So when I'm presenting about leadership branding of others, when you lead your brand as a leader of others, the question I like to ask people is, would you want to work for you? What would it be like to have you as a boss? Okay. And I remember I was presenting a keynote at a big bank, and the guy was sitting in the front row like this. You could tell he didn't really want to be there, And I got to that question. He bolted up and he screamed an expletive. I won't say what it was, but I certainly had his attention from that moment on. He was like, "Oh my God, no way would I want to work for me." So anyway, but he came up to me afterwards and talked a lot about his challenge. But the point is, would you want to work with you? The question is, what is the experience of working for and with you? You remember I mentioned earlier that gentleman who made that 6-figure bonus?
Mm-hmm.
He made that because of that one question. I said, what would it be like to work for and with you? And once we started looking at that together, he suddenly realized it would not be a positive experience. And here's the thing, just like Starbucks, why do we pay extra for, here, let me do this. Coffee, when it's in the bean state, is worth about 2 to 5 cents per cup. You then put it into a grocery store bag with, ground it up, and it's worth about 10 to 50 cents per cup. You then go down the street to Dunkin' and you order a cup of coffee served theoretically with a smile, and it's worth $1 to $2 a cup. And then there's Starbucks. And we pay $4 to $8 around the world for a cup of coffee. What's that about? It's about the experience. It's not about the better tasting cup of coffee. Some people say it isn't even better tasting cup, but they're paying for the experience, the chance to create your favorite concoction and watch the barista make it with such a flair. And you get to order your chakalaka, mocha, froca, whatever. I can never say the names right. But the point is, you have that experience. And guess what? People will pay more for a superior experience. You want to make more money, you want to get promoted faster, provide a better experience in the workplace. It's that simple. But you have to have the self-awareness to understand what is the experience of working with and for you. So that's why I asked the question, would you want to work for you?
I think that question really puts perspective and get someone to go like, okay, that's the big question. And I think they feel the answers. That's why some of them can say, as you say, one of your coachee coming up with expletives. So Brenda, now we talked about a lot of the good stuff here. Can you also reveal to us perhaps some of the most damaging self-leadership behaviors that you regularly see in your practice?
Again, there's a lot of them in my books as well. I talk about a lot of them. Which one should we choose? I guess, oh gosh, where do we start? I guess the one biggest thing I would say about personal branding is this. There's a really big myth about personal branding, really big. It's across the world. I've tested this on 6 continents. The biggest myth, people think that personal branding is all about me. It's all about you. And people say, well, Brenda, of course it's about me. It's my brand, right? No, because your personal brand is the way you want others to perceive, think, and feel about you. So guess what? Your brand exists in the minds of others. So the most important person for your brand isn't you, it's those others, because that's who's holding the brand. That's who's got the perceptions, the thoughts, and the feelings. So how do you influence to make sure that you create the brand that you want in their perceptions, thoughts, and feelings? And that starts first with how you think about yourself, right? The way you think, and then the way you act, react, look, and sound. And again, that has to be locked and loaded, right? It has to be vertically aligned. How you think and how you act, react, look, and sound have to be vertically aligned. And when you are, you will build a great brand. But we often think about, oh, I have to say this, or I have to look a certain way, or I have to have the right clothing, or that's nice, but that's not the foundations of branding. That's probably the biggest mistake people make. They think, people come into me and say, Brenda, I want to improve my executive presence. I want to learn how to stand and to talk and to project. And well, we can do that, but we're going to start here first. Because underneath how you project and underneath how you stand and underneath how you move is what you're thinking about that.
Oh, I love that. Yes, absolutely. So accurately nailed. The part of, Brenda, where people feel that to project this is appearance, right? So as you say, it's way within, that's inner self that shows up and being really authentic. I also like to also get your point of perhaps some of the self-leadership failures that you have seen.
Self-leadership failures. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of self-leadership comes down to, first of all, self-leadership comes first and foremost with self-awareness. If you don't understand yourself, if you don't have a good sense of who yourself is, you will never be a great self-leader. And you'll never be a great leader of others, because you have to first be a great self-leader before you can lead others effectively, right? Okay, we know that. But self-awareness is the foundation to self-leadership. And often we don't spend enough time with that. We get up and we go, and we do, and we don't spend time really reflecting. We don't spend time really thinking. So that's one. The other thing I would say is confidence. Confidence is the secret sauce to just about everything related to personal branding. You got to have a sense of self, and that comes with confidence. You have a sense of others and how you interact, and that comes with confidence. And I was just talking with a client today, and we were talking about confidence. And we were talking about the definition of confidence. And the way I like to define confidence is, no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And once you can reach that point where you know in your heart that no matter what happens, you're going to be okay, life gets sweet. Because then you take risks. You look at the joy of possibility, you look at potentiality, and decide what I could do instead of focusing on what I can't do, what I might fail at. And life becomes an adventure. It's just so much fun. And that's what I wish for everybody.
I love that. I always akin to that, to this metaphor, this analogy where, you have only so many years on this planet. So if you're going to ride the ride, right, and thrive and be the best self and explore your maximum potential, there will come a day where you will have to exit this world. And when that day comes and you look back and go, okay, did I live my life to the way I wanted it to be? Am I proud of the life I lived?
And did I fail? Because I sure hope so. No, really, I do. Because that's where you learn and you go, that didn't work. We'll try something else, right? We're so afraid of failure. We have such a fear of failure. And it's such a shame, because I don't know about you, but I certainly learned the most from failures. I'm so grateful for my failures. It's a good thing, because I have a lot of them. But it's helpful. And I think we're so afraid to fail. We have to have the right answer. And I always encourage clients, try to fail. Fail small. You don't want to fail massively, but fail small, because when you do, good things come out of it inevitably.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, one thing that's true, Brenda, that each of us are, we're born without a manual on how life, is, or what life.
Thank goodness, by the way. Thank goodness.
So
how boring. Who's going to do that? That's boring.
And you have to fail to learn. And so that's all our journey. And that's why it's so unique for each and every one of us.
Well, that's exactly right. Now, can you imagine a little child trying to learn to walk? I have a couple of grandnieces and nephews, and they're trying to learn to walk, and they fall down and they go, nope, I'm done. I'm just going to sit here the rest of my life. Of course not. We get up. We used to have this as a child. I'll just get back up. But as an adult, we seem to just to shy away from that. So
Yes.
don't do
And
that.
we pointed out, you were talking about when you build your personal brand and getting to that authentic self, that inner self that's deep within, aligning with it. There are going to be times where you fail, right? When you feel like, okay, I messed up there. I didn't feel I was actually being authentic or actually showing the real me, but it's okay because I can go back and I'll iterate. I'll iterate until success. So
We can, but I'll tell you what's interesting. And the way we have a radar for knowing if we're being authentic, it's such a simple radar, but we've lost track of it so much. It's like we stuck it in the trunk and we forgot to pull it out and use it regularly. This is our internal radar. Do you feel good? Because if you don't, I guarantee you aren't being authentic. It's that simple. Stop at any point in time and say, do I feel good? Do I feel positive? If not, we've simply made a choice to fall into a place of fear and a place that's not your authentic self. It's that simple. I don't think life needs to be complicated. I actually think it's pretty simple if we just allow it to be simple. And that's one of the simplest. If it doesn't feel good, you're probably falling into a place of fear.
yes. And if it's cloudy because you cannot ascertain, you're like doubtful of what feeling this is, then take some time. Yeah. Recuperate, relax, have some space,
Take a
and
nap.
then take a nap, and then
Take a
ask
nap.
yourself that question again. And then
Yeah.
if the answer is clear, then that's the truth. Yeah.
Exactly. And you'll just feel right. I always say it's like holding a bottle of, like a bowl of water. It's like holding a bowl of water. And is it flat? Is it not moving? Or is it kind of jostling around, right? If it's jostling around, you're probably not too stable. Something's off. But if it's just that peaceful, calm a bowl of water that's not moving, you found that right balance. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Brenda. It's been a wonderful hour talking to you. I would like to invite whoever's watching to go to brendabence.com to look at Brenda's books. She's got 11 books, and I know the writing will not stop because Brenda says that there may be more books coming along the way. So buy them. They are available on Amazon.com and Books Depository. So thank you so much once again, Brenda. Any kind of message or, where can people reach and connect with you more if they want to?
Sure. Yeah. Like as you mentioned, come to brendabence.com. I'm on all the social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of it. Come to my website, sign up for my newsletter. I only send out newsletters when I think I have something to say. So usually I hope that they're good comments to say, but we talk about the inside out of leadership and how you can manage the inside to really make sure you're coming across on the outside as you want and as you build a strong brand for yourself.
Yes. Thank you so much once again, Brenda.
You're welcome.
I would like to thank everyone who's joined us and also for your comments. Now the show is brought to you by Leaderonomics and Opeaklife. I'm Lisa Wong. It's been an honor serving you. I'd like to thank my producer, Shasi, and the team. And everyone, be fulfilled, live a purposeful life, and see you next time.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.